Lesson 9.2 is about multiplying and factoring. First, we're going to talk about multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. And I'd like you to remember the distributive property that we talked about earlier in the year. And if we have something, a term, outside of a set of parentheses, we're going to distribute it to each term inside the set of parentheses. Here's our first example. We have 2x to the third. We're going to distribute that to each term in the parentheses. 2x to the third times 3x squared. We're just going to bring that down as a multiplication problem. Then we're going to distribute the 2x to the third power, or cubed, to negative 4x, or minus 4x. And we will continue with that to the 5. Now we're just going to basically combine like terms. Our numbers will be multiplied, our exponents and our bases will be multiplied. So 2 times 3 is 6. X to the third times x to the second will be x to the fifth, and we learned that in chapter 8, that when we have the same base and a different exponent, we just add the exponents. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then x to the third times x is x to the fourth. 2 times 5 is 10. And we don't have anything to multiply or another term to multiply x to the third with, so it stays the same. Let's try another example. This one has a negative coefficient in front of our x, or in front of our variable. So we're going to distribute the negative 4b to the third power to each term in the set of parentheses, just like we did in the last problem. And now we're going to bring it down, matching up like terms, our numbers, our variables. So we're going to take negative 4 times 3 and get negative 12. B to the fourth times b to the second is b to the sixth. Negative 4 times 7 is negative 28. B to the fourth times b, if there's not an exponent, it's 1, is b to the fifth. And then finally, negative 4 times negative 5 is a positive 20, b to the fourth. How do we factor a polynomial? Basically, it's the reverse of multiplication to factor out a monomial out of the polynomial. And to do this, we're going to find the greatest common factor by using primes. Find the greatest common factor of a polynomial. The first step is to list the prime factors of each term. Identify which factors they have in common, and then multiply them together to get your greatest common factor. Here's an example. Step 1, list the prime factors of each term. 6x to the fourth, we're going to list out the primes, or factor out the primes. 2 times 3 times x times x times x times x, because there are 4 x's. And we'll do this with each term. 2 times 2 times 3, and then our variables. And then 2 times x times x. Now we need to look and see which factors they have in common. There's 1, 2, and there's 1 x and another x, so 2 x's. So our greatest common factor is 2x squared when we multiply the individual factors together. So the steps are to find the greatest common factor, list the prime factors of each term, identify the factors that they have in common, and then multiply those factors together to get your greatest common factor. Next step will be to factor out that greatest common factor that you just found, and to factor it out, we're basically dividing. If I gave you 8x cubed plus 12x squared minus 16x, I would want you to find the greatest common factor first to determine what we're going to factor out. 8x cubed, listing our primes, is 2 times 2 times 2 times x times x times x. 12x squared is 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x. And 16x squared, you can see. Now we need to determine which ones or which terms they have in common. They each have 2 2's. Only one of them has a 3, so they don't have that in common. And then there's 1x. So our greatest common factor will be 2 times 2 times x, which is going to be 4x when we multiply them together. Factor that greatest common factor out. So you're going to divide each of those terms in our polynomial by 4x. 8x cubed divided by 4x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And x cubed divided by x to the first is x squared. So you're going to get 4x times 2x squared. And then you're going to do that with each term after. And you end up with 4x times 3x minus 4x times 4. Now we're going to list that in standard form. And you end up with 4x times the polynomial 2x squared plus 3x minus 4.